Hello again in this video clip series, my journey to God in a very secularized world. We had begun in the last video clip to talk about, the title of this article would be, Do Not Abandon the Church. In this period of great confusion and also scandals in the church and so on, we had begun talking about that. But to remain faithful to the one true church, even though it's full of scandals. I wrote that you can find it published. It's called Letter to Fellow Priests. I wrote in that article, Archbishop Fulton Sheen said, "The truth is the truth even if no one believes it. Error is error even if everyone believes it." Many Catholics actually believe today, in our climate of relativism, that the truth is established by the majority of people, or perhaps by the priests, bishops, or the Pope. Few Catholics realize today that God not only establishes the truth, but God is the truth, who is immutable. In this period before the second coming of Christ, that day will come, that day will not, St. Paul writes, that day will not come unless the rebellion, apostasy, comes first. So there'll be the great apostasy before the manifestation of the Antichrist. This indicates that the majority, if not the great majority of Catholics at all levels in the church will follow the very attractive apostasy, which will seem the best way, the right way, the most merciful way, the most loving way, the most ecumenical way, the most merciful way presented by the angel of light, Satan, who give their approval and blessing without any exhortation to promise, as we say in the act of contrition, promise with the help of the grace to sin no more and to avoid the occasional sin. Christianity without the cross of Christ. That's what we have today and what people want. These are the liberals who in the past left the church on the port side, the left side, of the bark of Peter. Well, there are many who leave the bark of Peter on the starboard side, the right side of the bark of Peter, the schismatic traditionalists, by putting themselves above the teachings of the magisterium of the church, above the truth which cannot change since it's part of the divinely revealed truth. You might find helpful my article, Is the Pope Catholic? The Greatest Schism in the Catholic Church History. The schismatic traditionalists seek to maintain their feeling of importance in triumphalism and clericalism that was rather strong before the Second Vatican Council. There is a big difference between traditionalists and schismatic traditionalists. To be a traditionalist is very good because it means to hold on to traditions and to the immutable truth from God. But schismatic traditionalists have put themselves over and above the authentic magisterium of the church, just as so many groups have done in the 2,000-year history of the church. There is much to be said about the value of the beauty of the Tridentine Mass to help people realize the greatness of God and to draw our attention toward God primarily and not to man primarily. But there's also much to be said about the benefits of using also the vernacular language at the proper moments of the Mass, as the liturgical books of the Church indicate. When the Mass was celebrated only in Latin, it was more difficult to change things so as to shift the emphasis and attention from God to man, as many want to do today. Many people were not seeking to discover what God wanted, but what man wanted. By offering more options in the sacred liturgy at the Second Vatican Council, it became easier for those who were not first seeking God's will and desires to improvise and make the exceptions provided in the liturgical books the rule to fit what they wanted. In other words, they make the exceptions the rule instead of following what is written. And putting man instead of God as a primary focus at the Holy Mass. But you cannot put handcuffs on everyone. God does not force anyone to seek his holy will so as to truly live the Our Father, thy will be done, not mine. No one goes to heaven by chance, and no one goes to hell by chance. God respects totally our free choice. No one is predestined to hell, as Calvin taught. Another example of this manipulation within the Mass is that communion in the hand was not only started in disobedience, but was perpetuated by deception. You might read my article, The History of Communion in the Hand. There's an enormous and fundamental difference between negating an ecumenical council, more than 2,000 bishops present, and saying that we have arrived to the prophecies of St. Francis of Assisi, or Blessed Catherine Emmerich, or St. Hildegard, Doctor of the Church, or Bruno Cornacchiola in his book, and others regarding the one false pope. As with all ecumenical councils in the history of the Church, the documents of the Second Vatican Council were protected by the Holy Spirit. It was the organized misinterpretation and dissemination of this misinterpretation of the Second Vatican Council that caused all the problems and disunity and negative fruits. The spirit of Vatican II. You cannot force faith or obedience. God himself does not force anyone to spend eternity with him in heaven. This is why after death there are two eternal places. One where there is God, who is the truth, and one where there is not God, but the father of lies. God totally respects the free will of each person. If a person does not want to be with God every day in this short life, in prayer and in living in the Our Father, thy will be done, at death, it is not God who sends this person to the place where there is not God, but this person willingly throws himself or herself into the eternal place where there is not God. As it says in the Catechism, number 1035, the chief punishment of hell is eternal separation from God. You might visit an article that I wrote. It's called The Great Difficulty in Overcoming Pharisaism, the difference between schismatic traditionalism and the false pope prophecies. You know, I am a Catholic. It is very important to keep in mind some very fundamental truths. One truth that may seem obvious, but no longer today, in an atmosphere totally dominated by subjectivism and relativism, is that the truth comes from God, not from me or any other creature, and also not from the Church. And thus no priest, bishop, or pope can change the truth of divine revelation, which is well summarized in the Catechism of the Catholic Church for adults. I am not referring to the Catechism that Bergoglio published in 2017. I'm referring to the one that John Paul II published in 1992, which the very numerous puppets of our mortal enemy, Satan, have managed to get the great majority of the dioceses of the world to forget about and to put it aside, or even scorn, especially most seminaries, as old and out of date of the modern church. Our Lady referred to this catechism, Our Lady in the message to Don Sevagobi, she referred to this catechism of John Paul II in this way. She said, "The great trial has come for the church, so violated by the evil spirits, so divided in its unity, so darkened in its holiness. See how error has flooded throughout it, error which leads to the loss of the true faith. Apostasy is spreading everywhere. A special gift of my Immaculate Heart for these times of yours is the Catechism of the Catholic Church, which my Pope, John Paul II, has wished to promulgate, to be, as it were, his shining last testament. But how many are those pastors who grope about in the mist, become speechless out of fear or compromise, and who no longer defend their flocks from the many rapacious wolves. Many priestly and consecrated lives have become dried up by impurity, seduced by pleasures and the search for comfort and well-being. The faithful are being drawn in by the enticements of a world which has become pagan, or by the countless sects which are spreading more and more. This is a message of Our Lady to Gobi on January 1st, 1993. I finish this clip here. May God bless you and Mary guide you.